We are live, and let me check the YouTube channel for people jumping on Spikeview's YouTube page. All right, so people will be tuning in now. Just give them a moment to continue checking in. I'd say let everybody find their seats, but that's gotten easier over the last year. All right, people are still jumping in. I need some elevator music. That's what I'll have next time, John.
Okay.
Or we'll have John's entrance music.
Can you tell how many people you have? Is there a way of knowing that?
I will eventually.
Okay.
Right now we have a handful. I know we have a handful that just logged on to YouTube. We've got about 50 folks that are registered. So.
That's good.
And if you're just joining in, Jon Reider is here, and I'm Andy Baino, and we are going to get started momentarily. I'm sure there are still a handful of people that are refreshing their inbox and getting the message that said, hey, the Spikeview live stream is starting now. The internet is amazing. I'm glad you all are here. And the comments start. Hello. And remember, everybody, you can use the comments in the YouTube channel to ask questions. So there are some things that we'll definitely be hitting on, but if you've got specific issues on your mind, go ahead and drop them in the comments. Hopefully we'll have time to get to them. If we don't, we will certainly circle back with you after this session. All right, I'm going to go ahead and jump into this because I'm sure that we have a lot of ground to cover. I'm guessing from the last time that you and I spoke, John, that we could go 2-3 hours if we weren't careful. So
probably
my job today will be both keeping us rolling, but also watching the clock. So I will, just as a reminder for people that may have registered and then they're suddenly thinking, I know something was vital that pulled me onto the screen and I can't remember exactly what the details were. So let me refresh your memory. The premise is that competition for college is fierce. High school students, now we're in 2021 recording this, and high school students face new pandemic era challenges. They had this whole year of extracurriculars just canceled, wiped out. And I'm guessing, I mean, anecdotally, I'll declare this is true, that extracurriculars are what most kids think of when you say a college wants to know more about you. They're going to say, there's my grades, and then there's the club sports that I joined, or the chess club, or all the other things. So teens and their parents are feeling stressed. If you're tuning in now, you might be feeling stressed. It's harder than ever to get accepted. I'll say harder than ever to get accepted if you're using the same approach that everybody else is using. So here's some encouragement that we're going to get into. Students and colleges have the same goal. It's find the best fit. So some natural questions that come to people's mind, given that there's the same, both sides are wanting the best fit. What do universities want to know about an applicant? And especially, again, thinking of these COVID times that we're in, you had this year of extracurriculars gone. What do universities want to know? And how can students stand out from the crowd when that often goes, that idea of standing out often goes against their teenage nature? I was a teenage boy, and now I'm the dad of two teenage boys. Sometimes they want to be the center of attention, sometimes they don't. That's childhood development, right? And then also related to this idea of standing out, how can students from underprivileged or sometimes marginalized communities, how can they stand out? So that's why we're here today, so that you guys, the viewers, can remove the guesswork, reduce your stress, and find the right fit college. Again, my name is Andy Baino. I work with Spikeview, which is a free global platform for young people to own their narrative. JON REIDER is joining me. He is nationally known for his experience in the college admissions process. John coined the term intellectual vitality, which is actually how he and I were introduced. And that's become a widely used factor, intellectual vitality, in the selective college admissions process. So colleges, I thought we'd start there. Colleges have been around for hundreds of years. Harvard's like 400 years old. Stanford's a couple hundred years old. At some point, schools realized that too many people wanted to attend. So, of course, it made sense that test scores would be used to screen applicants. You got to start somewhere. And Stanford University was doing this, John, when you were an admissions officer. And then something changed. What was your role at Stanford, and what happened with the admissions philosophy to change course?
The main thing that happened was that colleges became competitive agencies, just like toothpaste companies, toilet paper companies, car companies, cereal companies. Colleges got into competition for students. This had not been the case. Part of this was the development of a national market. It used to be that kids went to college pretty close to home, and that is still the case, by the way, for the great majority of students. The great majority go to school within 500 miles of home. But now there is a small cadre out of thousands of colleges. There's a small cadre. People vary on the numbers. Are there 25, 50, 75, whatever, well-known colleges that have worked very hard to create brands for themselves. And part of the deal with a brand is it has to be exclusive. It can't be something that everybody can get, like water from the tap. It has to be something that only a few people can get. That makes it interesting. That makes it attractive. That makes it desirable, like a Rolex watch. Here's my watch. My watch is a Seiko. No, sorry, it's a new watch. It's a Timex. Cost me $60. It's not exclusive. Nobody cares, but it keeps time. The second thing is that colleges developed tremendous amount of marketing. The amount of money that's spent on selling you, the parent or the kid, is enormous. And so the colleges had created this market. This is not just because, kids suddenly wanted to go to Harvard in unusual numbers, but it created that effect, and it snowballed. And now everybody thinks that you have to go to a fancy name brand college to amount to anything in life. And I'm here to say that's not true. That you can go to any college. Any college can be a good fit. Well, I'd say almost any college. If there are religious or political reasons or something like that, or you're allergic to snow, there are reasons why some colleges would not be a good fit. But most kids fit colleges the way most feet fit socks. I think the trouble with the idea of fit is it's often too narrowly applied, like Cinderella's slipper, that it only goes on Cinderella's foot and nobody else. And so the answer to your important question, Andy, what do colleges want? Colleges want eager students who want to learn. This year has been a tremendous upsetting of what everybody believed. You're absolutely right about extracurriculars, except, to be honest, I would say that they are a secondary feature of the college admissions evaluation process. When they ask colleges what you're interested in, what they're interested in students, one thing comes up over and over and over again in number one, across the board, from selective colleges to regular state universities. And that one thing is the high school transcript. Notice my words, high school transcript, not GPA. GPA varies from high school to high school. In fact, GPA varies from physics teacher to history teacher. So there's no way to have a standardized GPA. But there are standard, strong curricula, and that's what colleges want. Colleges want kids who are eager to learn. Colleges want kids who like school. And this has actually been a hidden benefit of the past year. As most extracurricular activities have been reduced, as you correctly said, kids couldn't do the sports. And I think that's terrible. I mean, they couldn't put on the school play. They couldn't produce the school paper. All the things that kids like, they couldn't do community service in the ways that they were used to doing it. All of these things were a deficit. Kids miss that stuff. And it's important to their personal development and their sense of self-esteem. And I think there's been a great loss. So I don't want to diminish the role that this has in students' lives. The other thing, of course, they missed was personal contact with teachers. Every piece of research that's been done in the past year says kids value being in a class. I have a student locally here in Palo Alto, near where I live, where they allowed the students to go back to class, and he went, only 3 kids there out of 30. And the teacher was teaching behind a screen because he was teaching everybody at home on Zoom. And the kid said, I could be in my bedroom. I don't have to be here. And he went to school for one day. He was not going to find that personal contact that he wanted. The other thing that happened this year, which I think many people are aware of, and which is going to continue, is that almost every college in the country, almost, not quite everybody, made the SAT either optional or the ACT, standardized testing, we'll call it that, made them optional, although they were very difficult to take. I had one student who tried to take no fewer than 9 ACT, SAT, she didn't care which, all 9 were canceled. She still got into college. Colleges found that they could evaluate students effectively, intelligently, without these test scores. And in fact, it advantaged them in some ways because they were able to get a greater proportion of qualified, underrepresented and first generation students than they ever could before. And these numbers are up in most of the selective colleges' admissions statistics this year. That is going to continue. I could be wrong. Maybe someone in the audience has heard otherwise. I'm happy to be educated. I have not heard of a college yet that has said that they're going to go back to requiring the test this coming year, 21, 22. After this year, they're going to reevaluate. I expect that they're going to be very used to this, and there's going to be very little change. Kids who want to take tests can take tests. I encourage all my students to take tests, see how they do. If they do well, they can submit them. If they don't do as well as the traditional metrics for that college, they don't have to submit them. Same thing with AP scores or things like that. You can do it if you. I think the students have gained great power, and I think that's wonderful. But the colleges have adapted, and I had one dean of admission I'm very good friends with who said his application numbers went sky high. They went up 100% in 1 year, and he knows why, because they were test optional. But he says we're not going to go back. He says I always believed in the tests, and now I believe in the kids. Think about that. He believed in the tests, but now he believes in the kids. I think that's wonderful, and that's a happy campus. Anybody wants to know which campus it is, I'll tell you later, but it's not important. So that's my assessment of what went on this year. It was a culmination of the long time growth in college applications. People have said, where are all these kids coming from? Because the age group, the cohort, is stable, right? There aren't any more babies than there were 20 years ago. In fact, in some ways, there are fewer. Yes, there are more kids applying from overseas, but that's a small increment. That doesn't produce a 100% jump in a college and in a college applicant pool. So what happens is that kids are eagerly seeking out these more selective schools because they think that that's important, and because they know, and families know that it's gotten more selective, they have to apply to more of them. And so you hear people just applying. I heard of a student this year. This is crazy. I'm not encouraging this. I have a student apply to 37 colleges. Totally unnecessary. if you are thoughtful and intelligent. But that's a sign of the panic and of the aspiration for the elite. I mean, these were not 37 ordinary, kind of lower tier schools. These were, fancy colleges that people think they need to go to. I think that's insane. I'll stop.
So while you're talking, you're making me think that this puts emphasis on the high school years, which sounds countercultural. We generally, especially in the West, we talk about just get through high school and college is on the horizon, like always looking to just like skip ahead, skip ahead of the high school years, of your upper teenage years, into like picturing yourself in college and then graduating and so on. What you're describing, both in terms of where people go, how to find a best fit, that there's, like you described your watch, that it tells time. It doesn't have to be the most expensive piece in order to still tell time. So it sounds like there should be more of an emphasis on what's going on in a student's life during the high school years. And then also I love that quote from the dean about, I used to believe in the test, now I believe in the kid. If the tests aren't the focus, then what is? What can students be doing so that a dean can believe in them and not just this test that's no longer being required on a college admissions process?
Excellent question. And most really good questions don't have simple answers. They have multiple answers. And part of my answer to this is in light of the fact that it was more difficult this year to go to school. But my simple answer to the student is, how do you do this? How do you develop your intellectual vitality? It's to ask questions. It's to seek out knowledge. It's not to be a passive recipient. That's the problem with screens in general, and learning by screen, which I have done and I've enjoyed. It's not a terrible thing, particularly if it's a necessity. But the real learning goes on in interaction between people. Let me give you an example of intellectual vitality from my own field, which is history. But I could find examples in mathematics and in science and in literature, in lots of fields. Well, let's just take something really simple that most people can connect to. The Battle of Gettysburg. July 1st to July 3rd, 1863, is often seen as the turning of the tide in the Civil War, that the Robert E. Lee came north to scare the Union and hoped to win a decisive battle. The battle itself was a mistake, and it wasn't meant to happen at Gettysburg. It wasn't planned. And Lee made a very serious mistake. He should have attacked on the first day before the Union Army consolidated. But he didn't know where his cavalry was, and the cavalry didn't know where the Union Army was, so Lee played it safe. For once in his life, he was cautious. And it backfired on him, because finally on the third day, they made the big attack, Pickett's charge, as people know, and they were roundly defeated. And really, the South never launched an aggressive attack again. It was really now a matter of time until the sheer numbers and power of the North would end the war. If Lee had won the battle, he could have beaten the Union Army and he could have captured Washington. He could have captured Lincoln, maybe. We don't know. And the war would have been over. And maybe the United States would be 30 states and the Confederate States would be 13 states and we'd have two countries. Who knows, right? But the point is, it was a crucial fulcrum. When I took U.S. history in high school, we could study that because we had more time. I'm showing my age, but we only got up to JFK. Today, they have to go through Obama and Trump. They have to move much more quickly. And I ask high school kids, all high school juniors in this country take U.S. history. I ask them, how much did you learn about the Battle of Gettysburg? And they often say, what? I don't know about the Battle of Gettysburg. And I said, it actually could have gone differently. Why don't you find out why? Ask your teacher. It's just, they just can't cover it. But you could do the same thing in any subject. It's a student asking questions, wanting to discover more. This is what the college wants. And this is a pattern. You don't just do this in one subject. You do this all the way through high school, ideally. This is what intellectual vitality is. It means living the life of the mind, living a life of ideas, caring about what you're learning. Who's the expert on this? The high school guidance counselor? No. The teachers. The teachers may see this development. It's wonderful. In fact, if you, particularly in a foreign language, I was talking to a student last night who's studying German, unusual language in high school. She's had the same German teacher for 3 years. That teacher can describe her growth, to use your term, Spikeview's term, narrative, as how she becomes a more self-confident, more proactive learner. That's going to be a good letter of recommendation. So teachers who can see that are valuable. The other person who knows this best is the student themselves. Many people know what the Common Application is. The Common Application is used by about 700 colleges, including a lot of state universities. It's got one required essay of 650 words, and they give students 7 choices. You only have to pick one. But the first one is a very interesting question because it's so broad, almost anybody could answer it if they think about it. The question is, I'm simplifying it, tell your story. What is your story? Every kid has a story. Particularly, you referenced earlier the low income and minority kids. They have a story. They don't realize they have a story. But the story may be, it varies from kid to kid, the story may be how hard I had to work just to get my work done. Because, I've got 6 siblings at the kitchen table and that's the only place I can study. Particularly this year by Zoom, it's been very, very difficult. That is an important story. That's not on the transcript. The transcript just has the grades, but the story behind the grades is terribly important. And everybody can do that. And that's what colleges want to know. Colleges want to know, what have you done in high school? We don't have tests anymore. We might not have tests. We may not have activities anymore. We may even have a semester a year ago, which was all pass-fail. So we don't even have the grades, the density of grades that we used to have. So what is really coming back to is a more qualitative, I want to be very careful here with my words. I'm not saying subjective. I'm saying a qualitative description of the student's passage through high school. And yes, to follow up on your comment, high school, I think, this is going to be heretical. People want to argue with me, it's fine. I love arguments. I think high school is more important than college. I often used to tell parents when I worked at Stanford, I said, spend your money on high school. If you got money, buy the nicest house you can in a good neighborhood, which is going to have a good high school, or, go to a private school, because it's in high school that these intellectual habits are formed. And then you can go to any college and you'll be fine. You really will be fine.
That's good stuff. I was making notes about a couple of those quotes. So I've got 2 questions, or one question I want to get to in a moment. But first, I've got my own definition for intellectual vitality, or being curious. But I'd like to hear from you. Just what's a short and sweet way of defining intellectual vitality? So you're talking to a teenager and they say, okay, yeah, so I'm thinking back to 20 minutes ago when John Ryder got on this session and he said transcripts aren't just the thing. They want to know about the individual. They want to be a champion of the kid and not just a test. So what's a succinct definition of intellectual vitality?
Love of learning. That's all you got to have. Love of learning. And
so my next question, that's good. That's good. Love of learning. So my next question is a follow-up on that, and it's demonstrating the love of learning. So one of the draws, you and I have talked about this before, that why I am so excited about the Spikeview platform is just this it enables this. It enables demonstrating love of learning. So a natural follow-on question would be for someone who's putting their information together and they're trying to figure out those narratives. And I'm thinking back to my own youth. And imagining if I was using a Spikeview platform, all those years ago, I was a straight A student for exactly 1 year in the 2nd grade. But throughout my life, I've had several experiences where I've been able to skip the line for an opportunity. Sometimes it was education related, sometimes it was work related, but several of those experiences. And one of those experiences was watching my dad masterfully hook a college dean on an emerging group of underserved students, the homeschool community. So I know firsthand the power of storytelling. I mean, now that's one of the things that I'm regularly preaching to people is the power of storytelling. But in your view, if students are going to make themselves the obvious choice in selection process, if they're going to demonstrate this love of learning, what type of stories should they be sharing?
I always try to teach by example. And I'm going to use two examples from former students that I had. I was teaching a freshman woman at Stanford who wrote unusually well. Her sentences were varied. Her vocabulary was sophisticated. It flowed. It was a pleasure to read. And I said to her, I went over the paper with her individually. I did that with all my students. And I said, Heather, you got a 5 on the AP English exam in high school, didn't you? She said, yes. How do you know that? Did you read my application? Because I was teaching as well as doing admissions. And I said, no, I could just tell from how well you wrote. But I said, you have a problem. She said, what is the problem? I said, you don't have anything to say. There's no content. It's all surface. It's all glittery ice. There's no depth. And then she said a very important thing. This is the key. She said, can you teach me how to do that? Nobody ever cared about that. It was all about form, not about content. And I said, yeah, I can teach that because I'm all about content. I'm all about thinking. So that was a student who was primed. She had a beautiful transcript and scores. All that stuff was good, but this was a student who was primed to learn. She really wanted to do that. A very common essay topic for kids to write about, there's an option on this on the Common Application, is about creativity. And a lot of kids write about playing the piano. A typical piano essay goes like this. I come home from a hard day at school. I didn't do very well on the chemistry quiz. I get a glass of milk and a cookie and I sit down at the piano and I play some Chopin and my cares go away. I'm restored. The music makes me whole. It's very nice and it's very true. It's not fake. The trouble is if you're an admissions officer, you read that 50 times a week. 50, 50. It's very, very common. It's as if every kid in the country has a cookie after school and after a bad chemistry quiz. So here's another one. This was a kid who was a very good pianist, and he's now a professor of history at Chapel Hill in North Carolina. But at that point, he was a high school kid. He wrote about playing the piano from inside his own mind. He demonstrated his intellectual vitality in the following way. He wrote, I don't want 1,000 kids doing this next year just because I'm saying this was a good essay. It has to be felt. It has to be true. He wrote about playing the piano in a formal setting like for a recital. When you're thinking about your audience, you have to reach the last row. You have to have an interpretation of the music. You have to be speaking through the music. It has to be highly thought out. On the other hand, when you're practicing, and of course any pianist practices a lot, they have to, he was playful. He would try it this way, he would try it that way. He would vary it. He was doing it for his own self-improvement. When I showed that essay, this was many years ago, to a new dean of admissions at Stanford, I said to him, here, Bob, you'll like this kid. He's a thinker. That's all I said. He's a thinker. That essay showed he was a thinker. And Bob handed the essay back to me, and he said, correctly, he says, you and I are going to get along just fine, which we did. We got along great for the 3 years that we worked together, and we both left at the same time. The point is that the student had gone inside his own mind and showed how his mind worked. He was not going to major in music. That was not the point. He actually majored in economics. I think it's a lost subject. But he knew how to articulate how his mind worked. Think about this for the moment. The admissions office works for somebody else. Yeah, it works for a lot of people. It works for the athletic department, often too often. It works for the alumni office so they can get donations. It works for all kinds of people, but it mainly works for the faculty. The faculty have said, literally said, through a committee or through submissions to the admissions, we want kids who like to think. We want kids who want to be eager students. And we want you to find us those students. So the admissions office are agents of the faculty. And they don't have to be experts on the subject matter. I didn't know enough about math, to balance my checkbook, but I knew what the math department wanted. The math department wanted kids who loved math, who came home from school and sat down at the kitchen table with their glass of milk and their cookie, and they made up interesting math problems. They were designing the problems for the math competition at the math club the next week. These were the kids who ran the math club because they like to think mathematically. A lot of people think those people are strange, but that's what math faculty are like. They like math. And so they're going to seek out kids who just like math for its own sake. And that's a great asset to a university or a college, a great asset. So those are some examples of how students can articulate their story.
Those are helpful examples too, because it's a reminder that whether the subject is playing the piano or it's baseball, it's chess, it's designing a world on a computer game, whatever the thing is, it's not so much, what I'm hearing you say is it's not so much the actual activity, but it's the brain work behind it. It's what's going on upstairs. What's your thought process? What's it doing to you on the inside? What is it about this thing that makes you stop in your tracks and you can't wait to tell somebody at dinner or while sharing cookies and milk, I suppose, in your world?
Perhaps without realizing, you hit on one of the other options on the Common App, which I think is ideally suited for this, which is describe something that you do where you lose track of time, where you get so involved in what you're doing that you don't care where you are. You just are doing that thing itself. You're so focused. Again, you can answer that in 20 different ways. There's no right answer to the question. But again, the colleges are wanting to get, what do you take seriously? What do you really care about? What really grabs you? And that's a really good question. One of the other themes that goes through a lot of the Common App questions is, how did you grow? You see, this is the idea of a narrative as a story. There's an arc. There's a direction. In the case of high school, it's about growth. It's about improvement. It may even be about an obstacle, and then you overcame that obstacle. Kids have a bad teacher, but they learn how to deal with that, or they get out of that class and get a better class. There are a lot of ways that you can describe your growth, but that's what they expect. The colleges expect you to use your high school experience as growth, not just physical growth. Obviously, kids are growing mostly through high school, but intellectually, we don't reach our peak intellectually until our 20s. Our brains don't fully come together until that point. But the high school is a crucial arc for that. And these questions on the application, they bring that out.
John, we're getting near the end of our time for this session. I want to give our audience homework, as much as I disliked homework. So I'm imagining the people who've already got a Spikeview portfolio that they've begun putting together, or those that are going to be. How can Spikeview users practice intellectual curiosity and then demonstrate it to others? You've given a couple of examples that you've seen. I want, if you would, circle back on something that, if you were giving a homework assignment, just a thing that you would have somebody take action on, what would it be?
I would say, what was your favorite class in high school last year? I did this last night with a student. I said, what was your favorite class? And she said, physics. She says, but I don't like science. So what was it about this physics class that made science interesting? Well, she says, it's an amazing teacher. I said, no, it's you, the student. You bought into what the teacher was doing. So again, it's reflecting on yourself. What did you enjoy about this class? What did you learn? And then I would add one more piece to the homework. What more would you like to learn? What is the next step beyond where you got? Where do you want to go next? Where does this take you? Where is your curiosity driving you towards? That would be how any student, and actually any adult, we can look back on our high school years and say, what was good? What did I really enjoy? What did I learn from? You can do that. I can do that. I've been out of high school a lot longer than you have. But I can remember, maybe because I think about high schools a lot, I can remember what really mattered to me.
That was good. That's very helpful. Actionable. I love it. Just real quick, any way that you want people to get a hold of you if they want to learn more about the legendary Jon Reider?
Yeah, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. One is I would like people, I'm going to disturb the computer a bit. I'm a co-author of this book. It's called The Mission Matters. It's in its 4th edition. It gets really good about the college process. Oops, I lost me.
There, you're back. I'll
Okay.
pile on and I'll say that the
Okay.
Admissions Matters book is the gold standard of the college application process. How's that?
It's widely used in courses on how to become a college counselor. The other thing, if you want to sort of see me in action, is you should watch this new Netflix documentary, just been out a month. It's called Operation Varsity Blues. It's a very good recreation of the scandal where these parents were bribing colleges through this scoundrel Rick Singer getting into college. I'm a commentator in the film, and a local movie reviewer described me as informative and delightfully acerbic. So I'll take that as being delightfully acerbic. But if anybody has a personal question for me, they want to write to me, I'm happy to answer questions. My email is Jon Reider, JONREIDER 99, Jon Reider 99, all one word, @gmail.com. And I hope I don't get hundreds, but I'll answer anybody who asks me a question. Okay?
Perfect. I appreciate that. And for those of you who aren't yet familiar with the platform, I'll tell you just briefly that SpikeView is a free tool, free I said, students can use to demonstrate their intellectual vitality. You can put into action these things that you're learning from Jon. Don't put this off until the night before a job interview or right before you fill out next year's Common App or you go on a campus visit this summer. Go to spikeview.com, set up your free portfolio, start putting into play these ideas. I love that reflection homework assignment and then asking yourself where your curiosity is taking you. I already know, I've been talking to some high schoolers already on the platform who I know can put this into practice. I'm going to nudge them a bit on that. Parents, if you're tuning in because you're trying to help your teenager stand out from the crowd of applicants, make sure they're using SpikeView. All right, everybody, this has been fun. Jon, thank you so much for being generous with your time.
My pleasure, Andy. I enjoyed it.
All right.